Quote, talks are continuing and going well. That's the White House on negotiations with Iran. Iran says it's not talking. President Trump says if there's no deal soon, the U.S. will blow up all of Iran's energy infrastructure. TSA employees start receiving back pay. The weekend's long airport security lines begin to shrink a bit. Congress remains at odds and out of town. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer on a CBS investigation into possible hospice fraud in California. Plus, another big bank settles claims tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Great to be back with you. My profound thanks to Ed O'Keefe and Nicole Killian, who guided this show while I spent some time in Southern California. The last time I was in this chair, you saw 2 bandages here due to precautionary biopsies ordered by my ever-careful dermatologist. Well, we have the results. Good news. Both came back benign, but I've made a decision. I'm still going to go without makeup and hairspray. You know that free-range Major I referred to that Thursday before I left for California? Well, that's what's going to have to be the case from now on. If you have objections, please, I urge you, file them in triplicate. Now, while I was away, I tracked the war in Iran. Coming back to Washington didn't really make things much clearer. The contours of the conflict do not appear to have shifted much. The U.S. and the Israelis, with their warplanes, still dominate the skies. The Iranian Navy is in worse shape than a week ago, but it wasn't in great shape a week ago to begin with. The Strait of Hormuz remains mostly strangled, with energy markets just as rattled as they were when I left for California 8 days ago. One thing appears to have changed, the sense within the White House that something is being negotiated. What? That is unclear. With whom? Also a bit unclear. President Trump said over the weekend regime change has basically been accomplished and that the new leaders, that's his phraseology, are making concessions. Here's what the president said last night on Air Force One about more tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
And today they gave us another present. They gave us 20 boatloads of oil. That starts being shipped tomorrow. We're having very good meetings, both directly and indirectly, and I think we're getting a lot of very important points.
Sir, were you?
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt clarified the president's remarks a bit today, saying those additional tankers will transit the strait, quote unquote, in the coming days. That lack of specificity kept oil markets, well, jumpy. Brent crude traded at above $113 per barrel. West Texas Intermediate traded above $103 per barrel. As for new leaders in Iran, the Secretary of State today sounded a bit less certain.
And if there are new people now in charge who have a more reasonable vision of the future, that would be good news for us, for them, for the entire world. But we also have to be prepared for the possibility, maybe even the probability, that that is not the case.
Also, the president said the talks with Iran, which, by the way, the Iranians deny are even occurring, but the White House said are going well. Well, those talks did not satisfy the president. The United States will, according to a Trump social media post this morning, blow up all of Iran's oil wells, electricity generating plants, and possibly even its desalination plants. Oh, one other thing. More U.S. troops arrived in the region, and according to the Washington Post, the president's military advisors are preparing for weeks of ground operations involving infantry and special operations forces. The White House said the president needed maximum leverage and called these new deployments part of his enhanced optionality. Your optionality at the gas pump, by the way, quite limited. Today's national average for a gallon of regular gas, $3.99. It was $2.98 a month ago. And I can tell you from experience, it was $5.75 a gallon in SoCal last week. We begin tonight with Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Ed, much to cover today. Lots of dialogue with the press secretary, and you had a pretty important exchange about what the president's signaling.
Yeah, but did you just say $5.75 a gallon out in SoCal?
Yeah, for regular.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
For regular. Yeah, I mean, I get California pays a lot more, but my goodness. All right, well, yes. Amid those rising prices, And all the rhetoric we've heard from Iran and the United States, you could say that the White House has been sending mixed messages on Iran. The president hopeful for diplomacy, but reports of more U.S. forces being sent to the region. So we put it to the White House press secretary today, Caroline Leavitt. What are the American people supposed to make of it all? Take a listen. The president continues to say the U.S. is in conversations with a more reasonable regime, but there are now hundreds of U.S. Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers in the Middle East, as well as thousands of other troops already deployed. So is he trying to end or intensify the conflict?
The president is focused on achieving the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. With respect to forces that are on the ground in the Middle East, it's the job of the Pentagon to create maximum optionality for the commander-in-chief. It does not mean the president has made any additional decisions. Again, he remains focused on ensuring that the Pentagon continues to achieve the objectives of the operation that was launched 30 days ago, and we're well on our way to doing that.
So if an American sitting at home hearing him say, I want to talk, but I keep seeing them send troops to that region, what are they to make of what's going on?
There's two tracks here. The president has always said that diplomacy is his #1 option and priority. Again, he tried earnestly, in good faith, to engage in diplomacy with the Iranian regime prior to this operation being launched in the first place. He wanted to strike a deal, and he sent his top negotiators to do so. They spent extensive amount of time and effort trying to strike a deal, and unfortunately, the previous regime, again, many of those leaders no longer with us here on Earth because they faced the consequences of the United States military. So if there's ever a chance for a deal, again, the president is open to listening, but it does not deter him from focusing on the military objectives that he set out 30 days ago and that our military is continuing to achieve day by day.
So again, the president pretty optimistic about talks. The Secretary of State, National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, a little more pessimistic or realistic in two big interviews today. But bottom line, hundreds now of U.S. Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, now in the Middle East, along with the thousands of other soldiers, Marines, and sailors already deployed in the region as the president continues weighing his options, Major.
And to that Washington Post reporting I referred to, Ed, about military planners having preparations for weeks upon weeks of ground operations, that means they have to sustain them. That means they have to build in other things behind them. This could be a while.
It absolutely could. And it's part of what continues to bring such pause to those that are monitoring this. And we even saw some congressional Republican criticism of this today, suggesting that the president doesn't want to go there, doesn't want to take this step, which is why you continue to hear him at least publicly try to push the idea that diplomacy may work out here. But the vibe certainly seems to be, look, we gave them an opportunity the first time. It didn't work. We're giving them an opportunity now. If it doesn't work, we'll take that step that could lead to several weeks, if not months, of more prolonged military action. Obviously, something he's weighing on him. No public events here at the White House today for the president, which presumes he's spending a lot of time thinking about this. They haven't told us what exactly he's been up to, but undoubtedly more of these options being presented to him by the Pentagon. Major?
Ed O'Keefe, North Lawn of the White House. Thanks so very much. For more of what we're seeing at airports, CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga joins me now. So the weekends were crowded. I can attest to that. But today looks quite a bit better. And we have word the TSA employees are beginning to receive back pay.
Yeah, TSA employees will see about 160 hours worth of back pay either today, tomorrow, or at the very latest, we're told, Wednesday of this week. So they're still missing a couple of weeks, which will shake out in future installments, Major. But it is the first sign of this, of relief for a lot of these workers who make $45,000, $55,000 a year, and many of them live paycheck to paycheck. Many who we've spoken with reference those gas prices that you're talking about here can now finally put gas in their car and actually show up to work. So in places particularly like where I was last week in Houston, where you continue to see, and yesterday we saw 36% of TSA officers call out, in places like BWI where they're seeing 38% call out. The hope is that some of that goes back to normal tomorrow. But still across the nation's airports, there is a call-out rate of about 11% as of yesterday. The true test will be when we see those call-out numbers tomorrow. reflecting today's numbers to see whether or not folks have gone back. Obviously, another big concern, more than 510 officers have quit during this shutdown.
Just quit entirely, walked away.
Walked away because, Major, over the past 6 months, for more than 87 days, TSA officers showed up to work and were not going to receive an on-time paycheck, basically every other day.
Right.
And what other job in America do you show up every other day without the guarantee of an on-time paycheck?
Not this one. Not yours.
Not mine, that's for sure.
I want to play for you in the audience's benefit, Nicole, something that Tom Homan, the White House border czar, said on Face the Nation yesterday about ICE presence at airports. Let's listen.
We're going to continue an ICE presence there until the airports feel like they're in 100%, in a posture where they can do normal operations. So if less TS agents come back, that means we'll keep more ICE agents there. The president has been clear. He wants to secure those airports, especially, as I said earlier, in an increased threat posture. We need to secure those airports. ICE is there to help our brothers and sisters in TSA. We'll be there as long as they need us until they get back to normal operations and feel like those airports are secure.
Very quickly, Nicole, that's not their specialty, ICE and airport security. How much are they helping?
Well, they're able to direct traffic in line. They can check IDs. They can't use those big scanning machines, which typically take months to train on. But, Major, it's a question of whether we'll see them continue to stay at airports now or in the future, by the way. We are just weeks away from FIFA, the World Cup,
right,
and we have the Olympics coming up. So if we're not able to recruit and retain more great talent at TSA, this could be an option that we see in the future.
Could be part of a new normal. Nicole Skanga, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We turn out to Capitol Hill, where we find our Caitlin Huey-Burns. There are not many members of Congress there, but you are. Caitlin, catch us up on what is or isn't happening.
Yeah, Major, can you hear my echo here? It is so empty. I can't think of any other job in any other industry where you could go home for 2 weeks without actually completing the task you were supposed to complete before leaving town. But this is Congress. Here we are again, and Congress has left for a 2-week recess without solving this issue. If you remember, last week, the Senate, by unanimous consent, passed a measure to fund pretty much everything in DHS except for ICE. The House decided they didn't like that. They didn't even take it up, even though it had been negotiated by Republican Majority Leader John Thune. House Speaker Mike Johnson instead had them pass a 2-month continuing resolution to kick the can down the road further. Meanwhile, Americans everywhere are wondering, why can't Congress figure it out, and how are they allowed to leave these halls without having done so? So I put that exact question to one Republican member of Congress I found up here on Capitol Hill today. Take a listen to what he had to say.
To your point, people have every right to be frustrated, but let's not forget, this is the deal is cut if the Democrats will just give us that 60-vote threshold and actually have a vote.
But they say that the Senate already came to a deal, that your Republican colleagues over there already came to an agreement, and then the House didn't pass it.
Well, I think that what is very clear is if you looked at the fine print, when I've talked to senators over the weekend and they saw that they would gut DHS, they realized that this is something they didn't want to either. And I'm glad to see that there are more discussions going on. I think Steve Scalise over the weekend described that there was a lot of buyer's remorse when people started to look at the fine print. And I hope that we can work out an agreement sooner than later.
So bottom line, Major, as you can see from that, the House and the Senate just aren't on the same page, but they aren't physically here to talk to one another. Now, lawmakers have told me today that they are still working behind the scenes, even though they're home in their home districts and states, to try to get to some conclusion. But there isn't really an end in sight because they are so far apart on some of these issues. So we will wait and see whether the public pressure building up as they are back home, whether they are starting to get earfuls. But I should note, Major, as you and Nicole were just talking about, yes, TSA officers are starting to get the paychecks that are due to them, but FEMA, Coast Guard, other agencies within DHS are still going without pay. And we are in the middle, of course, of peak travel season, but also in the middle of a war. And these are significant issues that Congress needs to address, and they are not here, at least at this point, though they will say they'll come back if needed.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, Capitol Hill, thank you very much. Kentucky Republican Congressman and, importantly, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, joins me now. Mr. Chairman, always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Major.
So when does this get settled? And when you hear references to this odious fine print in the Senate deal, what are your colleagues talking about?
I think we were surprised and disappointed that the Senate had a deal at, was it 3 a.m. in the morning? There was no communication with Mike Johnson. It was almost like a shady kind of negotiation to where there was no input or even a heads up to the members of the House, and that's not the way a leader's supposed to act. It's very unfortunate because no one wants to get this resolved more than I do. I'm frustrated that Congress can't do its basic fundamental job, and that's to pass appropriations bills. Even though we've appropriated probably 99% of the federal government, there's still that 1% that's very important to Homeland Security when we're at a potential state of war with the Middle East. We've got criminal illegals in many of the cities in the United States. We've got drugs now entering through the coastline since the southern border is secure. So there's never been a greater need for Homeland Security funding than now.
So when your constituents, who are reasonable people, say to you, Mr. Chairman, I can't leave my job for 2 weeks and go on recess or holiday or district work period or whatever you want to call it if I don't get my job done, how come you can do that?
Well, again, I think everyone's probably become accustomed to government shutdowns, and that's a terrible attitude to have from the American people. But I believe that's one of the reasons that more members of Congress aren't in a bigger hurry to try to get an agreement resolved. But at the end of the day, we could be there for 3 more weeks, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. If the Democrats aren't going to support anything with respect to Homeland Security funding, then I don't know how what good it does being in Washington. If I were President Trump, I wouldn't want Congress in session. Congress is broken, especially in the Senate. And there are not a lot of Democrats other than Senator Fetterman and 1 or 2 Democrats in the House that are even willing to consider crossing the line to vote on bipartisan measures. So it's very frustrating time to be in Congress. And that's why you're seeing so many members of the House of Representatives announce a retirement.
More than 50. Mr. Chairman, a couple of my colleagues here at CBS wrote a story last week about California, Hospice, Medicare, and Los Angeles, finding, by California's own standards, lots and lots of potential red flags for fraud. What is your committee going to do about that?
Well, first of all, I want to brag on CBS. You did a great job of investigative reporting on this. That's what we need in oversight. We need curious journalists who do a good job investigating waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government. And you've done a great job on California. There's also an audit to back up the fact that there's a massive amount of hospice fraud, particularly in Los Angeles County. And what's already apparent is there were very few guardrails. There was just opportunity after opportunity for people to go to the UPS store and get a post office box and create a company and start sending out fake invoices to receive funding, much like what we've seen in Minnesota with the learning centers and some of the other welfare programs. But this hospice fraud is the worst I've seen, because that's one program that every American supports. If anyone, and my family's had members that have gone through hospice, it's an invaluable service. And it's always hard to find funding for hospice because it's so expensive. But to see that there's such a massive amount was spent in one county, it appears that 18% of the entire amount of hospice billing in America last year went to Los Angeles County. You had thousands and thousands of people who were registered to be hospice providers, but yet they had mysterious addresses that in their bedrooms of their apartment buildings, and you can't get anyone to return the call. We've been going down the list like you all have been at CBS, calling some of these hospice providers, and we can't even get a return phone call. So it's very concerning. I know that the Department of Justice is taking this seriously. J.D. Vance has recently been appointed to be kind of in charge of fraud in general. So hopefully we'll be able to find out more.
I want to ask you about something that happened late last week regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Bank of America reached a settlement, $72.5 million with Epstein's survivors. A court needs to approve it. But, Mr. Chairman, you know this. At $72.5 million from Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, $290 million, Deutsche Bank, $75 million. That totals $437.5 million in settlements from banks who do not like to part with their money. What does that tell you about what they're trying to avoid and what may have gone wrong? And should there be any criminal remedies for these things that are being settled?
Yeah, look, that's one reason the documents have been difficult to turn over by the federal government. There are so many class action lawsuits ongoing with the victims of Epstein. It's hard when you've got settlements that have been made, class action lawsuits that have been settled, class action lawsuits that are pending. That's a challenge to disclosing some of the documents. But at the end of the day, I think whether you're the Trump Department of Justice, whether you were the Biden Department of Justice, Obama Department of Justice, whether you're the House Oversight Committee or a Senate Investigative Committee, we all want to see people convicted. No one wants to protect anyone that was involved in Epstein's terrible crimes. But I think what we're learning and what we're seeing is it's very difficult to prosecute. You have some of the main witnesses like Epstein who are dead now, and you've got crimes that were committed 20 years ago. One thing that I think we can say with confidence is the federal government failed the victims. The federal government did a terrible job of prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein. And we're trying to get the truth to the American people. We want to see people prosecuted. We brought in some of the main bad actors like Lex Wexner, who said under oath that they didn't really have a close relationship with Epstein. That's very hard for me to believe. But with Epstein dead, and the victims who have signed, settlements and agreements, the non-disclosure agreements, it's very difficult to prove otherwise. We're doing the best we can. I think the federal government's doing the best it can in turning over the documents. We've gotten all the documents from the estate turned over, but we're still trying to get some convictions.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, before I let you go, you said the federal government made a mistake. Did the Trump Justice Department make a mistake in 2019 when it asked and basically ordered the state of New Mexico to stop its investigation into Zorro Ranch, where Jeffrey Epstein, it is now clear, abused young women?
It looks like that decision came, yes, from the Trump Department of Justice, but specifically from the Southern District of New York. And, Ms. Comey was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. We probably will have some questions for her with respect to that. We've been very critical of Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney with the first shot at Epstein in the Florida district. So the many presidential administrations, departments of justice, have made huge mistakes in not getting Jeffrey Epstein and allowing him to continue to commit crimes. So there's plenty of fault to go around. But I think that particular deal in New Mexico, yes, that was a huge mistake. I believe it was more from the Southern District of New York, to be specific, but it was in the Trump Department of Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still to come on the Takeout, the chief of staff for Iran's exiled crown prince, Reza Pahlavi. Pahlavi made a pretty big speech over the weekend at CPAC. What are his aims? We will try to find out. Also, there are lots of problems in the world. You know that. Sports teams moving or threatening to move may not be at the top of your list, but some progressive Democrats want to make that harder, the threatening or the leaving. Texas Democrat Greg Casar will explain. Plus, countdown to liftoff has begun. If all stays on schedule, in 2 days, the Artemis II lunar mission will set some records, and NASA hopes accelerate a planned return to the moon. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Iran's exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi was welcomed to Texas over the weekend, speaking to Republicans at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. Take a listen.
What we ask of America now is simple. Stay the course. Do not throw this crumbling regime a lifeline. Pave the way for the Iranian people to finish the job.
Cameron Conserenia joins me now. He serves as Chief of Staff to Reza Pahlavi. Great to have you with us. I appreciate the time. What does that mean, finish the job? Because it doesn't appear that right now those who might want to seek a change in the regime have the means, the wherewithal, the military equipment to do so.
Major, it's good to be with you. Let's take a step back to where we were a few weeks ago.
Sure.
It's the first time in 47 years that the people of Iran, thanks to President Trump's leadership, finally have the chance to free themselves from this regime. Ali Khamenei, who ruled with an iron fist, brutally slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people, is dead, thanks to President Trump. He's the first president who had
and the Israelis. Correct.
And he has the first president who had the audacity and I think the moral clarity to push back against this regime. Republicans and Democrats really for years appeased the Islamic Republic. He finally took action. And I think that was action that was fundamentally appreciated by the people of Iran. This regime brutalized the Iranians just as it brutalized Americans. So what has happened is that the playing field is becoming increasingly even for the people of Iran to inevitably take the final step and topple this regime. And Iranians have proven that they're willing to risk their lives, to give their lives. You saw and you reported on January 8th and 9th when 30,000 Iranians were slaughtered in their fight for freedom. And after that, the president took action to defend them, to hit back against those who were slaughtering them. So increasingly, the playing field is becoming more even, and the people of Iran at the end of the day can take back to the streets and take down this regime.
This is what the president said on Air Force One last night. Please take a listen.
The one regime was decimated, destroyed. They're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable.
Been very reasonable. What does that sound like to you?
Well, I think it sounds like a typical thing the Islamic Republic does, which is try to buy time. And I think that they recognize that the president is looking for a diplomatic solution. I think the president is right to seek one. The problem is that you won't find one with this regime. The Islamic Republic for 47 years has really been expert at buying time, lying, cheating, and stealing. And you saw even before Operation Epic Fury, before the 12-day war, the president was seeking a diplomatic option. And right up until the bombs started falling, he was trying to get one. His team was getting one. This regime is going to buy time as long as they can. I don't think that they'll give the president what he wants.
And the president sometimes refers to Venezuela, and you know what happened there. The world knows what happened. Took out Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and the regime remained, and the president has negotiated with them. Mm-hmm. Is that possible in Iran?
It won't work in Iran. It's not possible for the one reason that the people of Iran...
Do you think the president knows that?
I think he knows that, and I think that he'll realize that because he's trying in good faith to negotiate. I think the problem is that there is no partner who's operating in good faith on the other side with this regime. So Mr. Ghalibaf, for example, the current Speaker of the Parliament, who many say are part of these negotiations or others, the people of Iran will never accept them. If it is to be the case that Mr. Ghalibaf, for example, is to stay in power, the people of Iran will go out and protest and chant death to Ghalibaf, just as they chanted death to Khamenei. They'll topple him. They'll topple anyone from this regime who is left as a remnant or a rump of the Islamic Republic, because Ghalibaf is just as guilty as Khamenei. He was part of the slaughter of innocent Iranians. He's led the chants of death to America for years, just like Khamenei did, and just like Khamenei Jr., although nobody knows where he is, has been doing for years. So although the approach makes sense maybe on paper, it doesn't work in Iran because the people of Iran will not accept the rumps or remnants of the Islamic Republic.
Cameron, I appreciate you coming in. I hope you'll come back because I want to have a conversation about the exiled Crown Prince, his intentions, his abilities, possibly, if there is a change in regime. I hope you'll come back. Cameron Conserenia, I appreciate it very much. Coming up, Congressman Greg Casar joins me to discuss a bill he's got that would help communities, if they want to, keep their sports teams there, not let them relocate somewhere else. More on that when we come back. This is The Takeout. Welcome back. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is a true emotional crusher. Sports team leaves the community it's been in for many, many years. In the 50s, the story was the Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants. More recently, the Baltimore Colts relocated, the Houston Oilers relocated. Oh, yeah, and so did the San Diego Chargers. They went to some city north of San Diego. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, there's now a group of Democrats in Congress who are trying to empower local communities to stop this process, either the threatened move or the move itself. If passed, the Home Team Act would require franchise owners to provide at least a year of notice before a planned move, and it would give the communities involved a chance, if possible, they can scrape enough money together to buy the team before it relocates. One of the sponsors of that legislation, Greg Casar, joins me now. Congressman, good to see you. Why the interest in this? Thanks so much for having me on, as always. Why the interest in this, and what are you afraid of? Anything in Texas you fear might move, like the San Antonio Spurs?
We've got to keep the Spurs in San Antonio. And I experienced this when I was growing up in Houston, Texas, when I was a kid. And after they've been having some great seasons, the Oilers owner threatened the city of Houston, wanted the city to cough up a bunch of money. And when they wouldn't cough up enough money for this billionaire owner, he moved the team to Tennessee, where there is no oil. And I remember growing up cheering against the Titans in the Super Bowl. Look, I know sports is a business, but teams are more than just a way for the ultra wealthy owners to make more money. Our communities pour our hearts and souls into these teams. So my legislation would give communities a chance to purchase their own team, like the Green Bay Packers model that's been so successful at keeping that team in the smallest NFL market in the country, or another philanthropic owner or business owner to keep the team at home.
So pencil this out for me. If in negotiations a community doesn't want to put up X number of hundreds of millions for a new stadium, where would it find the capital to pay even more to buy the franchise in its entirety?
Well, look, we've seen this work successfully, and I saw it when I was an Austin City Council member. We wanted our own Major League Soccer team, and it sounded like the only way that it was going to happen was if the Columbus Crew left Columbus and came to Austin, Texas. And of course, I wanted a soccer team, but I didn't want to take one away from a home community. And actually, in Ohio, they had a law similar to the Home Team Act. And successfully, the owner of the Cleveland Browns purchased the Columbus Crew, kept the team in Columbus, and Austin got an expansion. That's the way that things should be. It creates a more level playing field for the community. Teams don't have to get uprooted to move somewhere else. And if a community wants to come together and create a good deal for a new stadium, they should be able to do that, but they shouldn't be negotiating with a gun to their head, where if they can't quickly come to an agreement, the team is just going to pick up and move.
How would this apply to ownership groups that have lots of different members in them, not one singular owner? Would it be the same? Would it apply differently? Could they sue to block it if they're one individual that's part of an ownership group?
Ultimately, if a majority of the ownership stakeholders choose to move a team, how this would work under the law is that ownership group would have to give their community 1 year's notice. And basically, an independent team of appraisers would come up with the value of that team, and somebody could get a chance to buy it. And if we had this kind of model in place, I'll tell you right now, the Supersonics would still be in Seattle. Someone in Seattle would have, it's a huge city, could have come together and said, you know what, we're going to buy the team and keep it in Seattle. It was a successful team. The exact same thing applies right now to the Chicago Bears. This is a keep the Bears in Chicago bill. You've got a billionaire family owning the Bears, threatening to move over to Indiana, and now you have a war between Indiana and Illinois taxpayers. That's not how this should be. A team that succeeded in Chicago, for example, for over 100 years, there's easily someone or a group of people in the city of Chicago that could put the money together to keep that successful franchise in that great American city.
Another one of your prominent supporters of this legislation, Bernie Sanders. Do you have any Republicans?
I think this is the kind of bill that would bring together Democrats, Republicans, and independent voters all over the country.
Right, but do you have co-sponsors? Do you have co-sponsors who are Republicans?
Oh, that's a great question. We are sending it out, and I'm looking for Republican co-sponsors as we speak. We just released the bill here in the last week, but I've yet to find, I'll tell you this, Major, I've yet to find a voter that opposes this bill. I think there may be, a few dozen sports team owners that oppose the bill, but I hope my Republican colleagues go with their voters, Republican or Democratic, rather than the owners of the teams or the heads of the major league sports leagues.
Well, everything could be better improved with independent appraisals of sports team values. Congressman Greg Casar, Democrat of Texas, I appreciate the time. Thank you. Coming up, Senator Rand Paul. He's done it before. He might do it again. What is it? Run for the White House. Our reporter panel will discuss that and a lot more. You're watching and enjoying, as always, The Takeout. Welcome back. It's reporter panel time. Before I do that, though, you eagle-eyed viewers probably noticed some additions to the family table. You see them right there. My thanks to our good friends at CBS Mornings. They were cleaning out some of their set. They had a little extra things left behind as they moved from one place to the other. They took pictures of these two candy dishes, one for the Democratic donkey, one for the Republican elephant, and said, Major, do you want those for the takeout? I said, send them as rapidly as you can. They did. They've got candy. Remember, reporters, it doesn't eat itself, so grab some candy before you go. To introduce you now, that's me, Matt Brown, Associated Press, Julia Manchester of The Hill. Robert Costa, my colleague, sat down with Rand Paul for CBS Sunday Morning and talked to him about several things. One, the war in Iran. Was the president led into it? And what he might, meaning Rand Paul, might do in 2028. Please listen.
I think he was misled by some of the more aggressive people. His basic instincts have been for less war.
What could be the political and economic cost should this war escalate and continue?
Well, the economic costs are very clear. In the political landscape, I think the longer this goes on, the less likely Republicans are able to hold on to the House and the Senate.
There was recently a headline in the Washington Examiner, Rand Paul sounds like he's running for president.
Yeah, I don't know yet. So maybe they know something I don't know. We're thinking about it, and I would say 50-50. We'll make a decision after the election, but I'm not going to do it just to do it. It would be, one, because we need to have a free market wing. We need to have a free trade wing of the party who's not eager for war and tries to at least explore diplomacy as an option to war.
Matt, it's been my experience. 50-50 means 80-20.
Yeah, exactly. It's really remarkable.
80-20, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting watching what's been going on the right over the past couple months since the war in the Middle East is outbroken. You've not just seen a split in the party, but also really almost a fracturing in some ways. I mean, Rand Paul has had his critiques of this, as well as Tucker Carlson and that wing of the party, and that has shown that Republicans are airing out some of their disagreements in public that really could be setting the stage for 2028.
And Julia, we even saw some South Carolina harassing fire. Nancy Mace saying that Lindsey Graham, the senior senator from South Carolina, dragging the country deeper into war because he's a very strong advocate of using ground forces to affect regime change.
You're certainly hearing more Republicans become more outspoken against the possibility of ground troops in Iran. Nancy Mace made those comments. You heard Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee over the weekend make similar comments, say if we go down this road, it's not going to be good for the party. Now, polling that we've seen of Republicans, particularly President Trump's very conservative MAGA base, shows that for the most part, the base is still behind President Trump. But I am curious, as you see more of these, leaders within the party, notable faces, media figures, for example, speaking out against the war, the possibility of ground troops, the impact on the economy, whether that trickles down to the base.
So over the weekend, about 8 million, and no one really seems to be disputing that number, 8 million Americans in 50 different states, that's all 50, showed up for these No Kings protests. Now, I know there's a sense of, well, that's just a reflexive hostility to Trump and Trumpism. Maybe it's Trump derangements, but 8 million is 8 million people. That's a lot. And it seems to indicate that there is something grassroots or otherwise going on that we ought to pay attention to for the midterms.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that just as we were discussing maybe some of the divides or fracturing that you're seeing amongst Republicans, Democrats can't agree on much themselves, but they do agree that they're absolutely outraged with this administration. And you are seeing that in the streets when it comes to these No Kings protests, where the administration's immigration agenda, the administration's policies on foreign policy, and even some of Trump's economic policies like tariffs have been, the signs that they're taking over the streets in cities all across America. That energy is what Democrats are hoping they can translate into votes, but that also means that they're going to need to have a message that captures all of those different diverse viewpoints that we're describing.
And Julia, what was interesting about many of the protests, a lot of them were much more immigration-centered than war in Iran-centered, which compels, it seems to me, House and Senate Democrats to continue to hold the line in this DHS standoff.
Yeah, and it shows
over ICE reform.
Absolutely, and it shows, I think, how much we've seen a flip since 2024 when we saw President Trump campaigning not only on the economy, obviously that was a big issue, but on immigration and securing the southern border. And now Republicans find themselves on the defense. When it comes to the No Kings protests and the turnout we saw, though, I think it's important to caution and say, look, it's obviously 8 million people. Something is going on. But ahead of the midterms, we see these protests from time to time. The Women's March, for example. And what made the Women's March so unique is that it turned into something. It turned into donations, people running for office. So I think that will be the big test for No Kings.
It always is. Matt Brown, Julia Manchester, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We are just about 48 hours away from what NASA hopes will be the Artemis II launch. Coming up, I'll speak with a former NASA astronaut about this historic mission around the moon. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. We will get to our special guest, Terry Hart, astronaut, in just a second. But if you can see around me, the Takeout set looks a little different. We're pretty excited about Artemis II. The whole look here, we took away the tie rack, but we kept one tie. Bill Nye, the science guy, we can't get rid of that one. Come on, we have to honor Bill Nye and the Planetary Society and everything about that. So I'm going to sit back down. Now we're going to get back to the show. If all goes according to plan, 2 days from now, actually to the minute, the crew of 4 astronauts on Artemis II will be counting down until liftoff. Take them around the world, around the moon. That's important. That's a big distinction. Going around the Earth is not a big deal. Going around the moon is a bigger deal. Former NASA astronaut Terry Hart joins me now. Professor of Aerospace Engineering at Lehigh University and flew on the 5th Space Shuttle Challenger mission in 1984. Terry, it's great to have you with us. 2 days out, what's the crew going through?
Right now they're in quarantine, Major, and they're waiting with bated breath to suit up and enter the launch vehicle on Wednesday afternoon.
So we've done this before, clearly, but we're now going to do it again. And why is the doing it again part so important, Terry?
Well, we're all explorers in our hearts, as you know, Major, and space explorations, the final frontier, as we used to say. We're getting used to living in space, and now it's time to move back to the moon in a permanent way, and then on to Mars someday.
And connect the two, permanent on moon, then to Mars. How are they connected?
Well, we have to learn how to live when we're only 3 days away, which is roughly the distance that it takes us to get to the moon. And we have a total ability to supply every day. We can send something to the moon. Once we go to Mars, it's 9 months away, and you can't come back till about maybe 3 years later. And the supply windows are only like every 9 months or so. So actually about almost every 2 years. So we really have to get our act together logistically to learn how to live on Mars. And we'll do that by learning how to live on the moon.
And how soon do you think we will be on the moon again? And how long would we have to be there to get comfortable before we can really, in an operational sense, start aspiring to go to Mars?
I think a few years, Major. It's going to be 3 phases. The first phase is going to be robotic, and we'll be developing living facilities on the South Pole, actually, where we think there's ice that we can use for water. The second phase will be kind of like part-time people helping assemble and build new laboratories. Then the third phase, maybe 5-10 years from now, will be permanently living on the South Pole of the moon.
Talk to my audience about the importance of ice on the South Pole. Why does that matter so much?
Well, it's economics. It costs down, well, we're getting the cost down a little bit, but it's roughly $10,000 to take a pound of something like water to the space station. Now, going to the moon, you can probably triple that. So $30,000 a pound for water, and we need water to drink. So we'll be processing water from that ice, and also using it for fuel, because you can make rocket fuel. You can make hydrogen and oxygen out of water and make rocket fuel to come back up off the surface of the moon.
Terry Hart, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. We are all excited about this, and I thank you for getting us prepared for the next 2 days ahead. And I want to invite you to tune in to CBS News 24/7 Wednesday. I'm going to be anchoring special coverage of the launch beginning at an hour earlier, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. Happy Monday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Cool set behind me. Very cool, very spacey, relentlessly curious, space appropriate, reliably civil, occasionally clever. Daily Report coming your way next.